To explore the notion that Batman could be the true mastermind behind Gotham's villains, we have to dive into a theory so dark and twisted that it challenges everything we think we know about Gotham, its protector, and its most infamous criminals. It is a theory that forces us to reconsider the entire purpose of Batman's existence and the purpose of his actions. For years, we have witnessed Batman fight against his foes, trying to rid Gotham City of its endless criminal activity. But what if the very idea of Gotham's chaos, the villains, the darkness that permeates every corner of the city, is actually a product of Batman's design? What if the villains we see in Gotham, from the Joker to Two-Face to the Penguin, were created not in spite of Batman's existence, but because of it? This theory is not just about Batman being a passive observer of the darkness in Gotham, but about him being the catalyst, the instigator of the chaos that defines the city. Could it be that Batman, in his quest for justice, has unwittingly, or maybe even consciously, become the architect of the very villains he swore to defeat? Could it be that the villains of Gotham, brought forth from Batman's obsession with order, are merely reflections of his own fractured psyche? What if the very chaos Gotham faces is a creation of Batman's need for control and his desperate desire to give meaning to his trauma? What if Batman's greatest battle is not with the criminals he faces, but with his own guilt and deeply rooted need to see Gotham remain in perpetual darkness to justify his existence as a hero? It starts with the core of Batman's mission, the tragic event that shaped his life. As a child, Bruce Wayne witnessed the brutal murder of his parents in Crime Alley. This experience sparked his commitment to stop crime at any cost. But what if this obsession, this relentless desire for justice, was not about saving Gotham, but about constructing the perfect battleground for his psychological war? Could the villains he faces every night be products of his own creation, his personal demons brought to life? What if Bruce, in his own subconscious way, needed these villains to exist in order to maintain his own identity as Batman? Let's take the Joker, for example, the most iconic of all Batman's adversaries. The Joker is not just a villain, he is the antithesis of everything Batman stands for. While Batman is grounded in order and justice, the Joker represents chaos and anarchy. But interestingly, the Joker is also Batman's perfect counterpart, a villain that not only challenges Batman physically but emotionally and mentally. The Joker, with his endless chaotic schemes and unpredictability, is a reflection of the darkness that exists within Batman himself. Could the Joker have been created by Bruce's own obsession with order and control? By seeking to be the one constant in a city full of criminals, Batman may have unintentionally bred his greatest adversary, a villain who thrives on unpredictability and chaos. Batman needs the Joker because he needs a battle to define himself. Without the Joker, who would Batman truly be? But it doesn't end with the Joker. The Penguin, a ruthless crime lord, represents the corruption that thrives within Gotham's elite, a symbol of wealth, greed, and power. Yet his rise in Gotham can be traced back to Batman's creation of a criminal hierarchy. By consistently fighting Gotham's criminals, in particular the organized crime syndicates, Batman forces these criminals to evolve. Oswald Cobblepot, who began his career as a petty criminal, finds himself drawn into the vacuum of power that Batman has left behind by attacking Gotham's traditional criminal empires. Could Batman's need to battle crime at every level have forced Cobblepot to become the Penguin? Could the Penguin's empire and his need for control be a response to Batman's presence in Gotham as an adversary who embodies the chaos Batman is constantly trying to fight? Then we have Two-Face, perhaps one of the most tragic of Batman's villains. Harvey Dent, once Gotham's White Knight, A district attorney, intent on bringing justice to the city, becomes the embodiment of duality after his face is horribly scarred. Two-Face's transformation, fueled by the psychological trauma of his disfigurement, can be seen as a direct consequence of the pressure Batman placed on Gotham's institutions. By constantly challenging the corrupt system, Batman inadvertently forces men like Harvey Dent to question their own morals and principles. Could Two-Face's fall be the result of Batman pushing Gotham's moral boundaries to their extremes? Dent's transformation represents the inevitable conflict between the ideal of justice and the harsh reality of the world. Batman is trying to control. Even Ra's al Ghul, one of the most powerful and dangerous villains in Batman's rogues gallery, can be seen as a reaction to Batman's methods. Ra's, the leader of the League of Assassins, wants to destroy Gotham and rebuild it in his own image. While Batman and Ra's are opposites, they are both driven by a similar need for control. Ra's sees Gotham's crime as a blight, one that must be eradicated. Batman sees Gotham's crime as a symptom of the city's suffering, but the result is the same. They both want to remake Gotham into something they can control. Ra's al Ghul's actions, though extreme, are a reflection of Batman's own inner struggle, his constant battle to reshape Gotham according to his vision of justice. But it's not just the classic villains like the Joker or Two-Face that Batman may have inadvertently created. Consider the entire criminal ecosystem in Gotham. Each figure, from Scarecrow to Poison Ivy, is a manifestation of Batman's mission. By pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable, Batman has created a cycle of escalation, one where each villain gets more extreme in response to Batman's escalating tactics. Every criminal Batman faces is in some way a reaction to his presence, and each battle he wages becomes part of the cycle that ensures Gotham's chaos remains alive and well. If we examine Batman's history, it becomes clear that he has always walked a fine line between order and chaos. His attempts to control the chaos in Gotham may have in fact created the very chaos he is trying to stop. What if Batman is the architect of Gotham's endless cycle of crime, not because he seeks to perpetuate it, but because he believes that in defeating these villains, he is somehow proving his worth as Gotham's protector? What if Batman, in his quest to rid the city of corruption, has unintentionally created a system that thrives on the villains he faces? These villains, after all, exist because Batman needs them to justify his mission, to define his purpose, and to ensure that Gotham remains the battleground for his eternal struggle. This would mean that Batman, in his pursuit of righteousness, has become Gotham's greatest enabler of chaos. His superhuman resilience, which he uses to fight evil, is also the same quality that keeps him trapped in a city that is forever stuck in darkness. Gotham needs its villains because it needs its darkness to justify the presence of a hero, and Batman, unwittingly, has become the creator of this eternal struggle between order and chaos. In the end, could it be that Batman, in his desperation to maintain control, has created the very darkness he seeks to defeat? Could the villains of Gotham be the result of Batman's own design, as he becomes more and more embroiled in his own cycle of pain, guilt, and self-justification? The answer may be more disturbing than any villain Gotham has ever faced. For if Batman is the true mastermind behind Gotham's villains, it would mean that Gotham's chaos is not a force outside of his control, but rather something he has orchestrated all along. The question is no longer whether Batman is a hero or a villain, but whether Gotham itself is a product of his making. The idea that Batman might be the true mastermind behind Gotham's villains is one of those theories that shakes the very foundation of everything we think we know about Batman, Gotham and the heroes and villains that populate its dark streets. This idea doesn't just suggest that Batman has created his foes in some indirect way. It proposes that Bruce Wayne, in his quest for justice, has consciously or subconsciously crafted the very chaos that has plagued Gotham City for decades. This theory is rooted in the psychological depth of Batman's character, his need for control, and his obsession with order, which might have ultimately led to the creation of the very enemies he fights. To understand this theory fully, we need to start with the fundamental nature of Batman. From the very beginning, Bruce Wayne's mission has always been to rid Gotham of its corruption, its crime, and its violence. His parents' death in Crime Alley planted a seed of revenge, but it wasn't just about the death of his parents. It was about the injustice of the world, the darkness in Gotham that allowed such violence to thrive. For Bruce, the only solution to this was to become Batman, a figure that would strike fear into the hearts of Gotham's criminals. But in his zeal to rid Gotham of its evil, did he inadvertently create the very chaos he sought to eliminate? Batman's role in Gotham's darkness is essential to this theory. Gotham has always been a city defined by its struggles, a city where crime and corruption are entrenched in its very foundations. Batman has spent his entire life fighting against this systemic darkness. Yet, despite his best efforts, Gotham has never truly been able to break free from its cycle of chaos. The question that arises then is why? Why does Batman's struggle seem to be a never-ending battle? And more importantly, why do new villains continue to emerge even after Batman's numerous victories? This is where the idea of Batman creating his own villains comes into play. Every villain in Batman's rogues gallery can be seen as a reaction to Batman's own actions. Rather than simply existing as independent threats, the villains of Gotham, the Joker, Two-Face, the Penguin, Rogues al Ghul, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, and countless others, represent different aspects of Bruce Wayne's own psychological conflict, his fear, his guilt, and his need for control. Take the Joker, for instance. The Joker is Batman's polar opposite, the embodiment of chaos and anarchy. The Joker thrives on destruction and unpredictability, aiming to destroy everything Batman stands for, order and justice. But the Joker is more than just a madman. He is a mirror to Batman. Where Batman uses fear to impose order, the Joker uses chaos to spread destruction. Batman's obsession with justice creates the very chaos that the Joker embodies. This chaos is a direct consequence of Batman's need for control. By trying to maintain a rigid system of justice, Batman opens the door for an adversary like the Joker to exploit the cracks in that system. The Joker doesn't just exist as a villain. He exists because Batman's need to impose order creates a space for chaos to thrive. What's even more interesting is that Batman's obsession with the Joker feeds into the Joker's own existence. By continuously battling the Joker, Batman reinforces the chaotic dynamic between them. Each time Batman defeats the Joker, he inadvertently gives rise to more chaos, as the Joker learns from each encounter, adapting and escalating his own brand of madness. This vicious cycle creates an endless loop where the Joker is not just Batman's greatest enemy, he is a necessary counterpart to Batman's own quest for justice. Without Batman, the Joker would likely have no purpose. He exists because Batman gives him purpose, and in turn, the Joker forces Batman to confront the very darkness within himself. Similarly, Two-Face is a reflection of Batman's inner struggle with justice and revenge. Harvey Dent, once Gotham's White Knight, a symbol of hope for the city, becomes the embodiment of duality after he is scarred during a case gone wrong. Two-Face's transformation into a villain, obsessed with chance and randomness, is a direct result of Batman's failure to protect Gotham's idealistic heroes. Harvey Dent was once the embodiment of justice in Gotham, someone Batman believed in. However, Batman's pursuit of justice and his own inability to maintain control over Gotham's systemic issues create the conditions for Dent's fall from grace. In a twisted way, Batman's failure to control Gotham's corruption gave rise to the chaotic force that is Two-Face, a character who embodies the random nature of fate, an opposite to Batman's methodical approach. Then there is Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, whose plan to destroy Gotham and rebuild it in his own image directly challenges Batman's beliefs about justice and the value of Gotham's society. Ra's al Ghul seeks to eradicate Gotham because he believes that it is beyond saving, but in doing so, he is merely responding to the failure of Gotham's existing systems, a system that Batman himself has spent his life trying to reform. Ra's, like the Joker and Two-Face, is a reaction to Batman's presence in Gotham, a figure who believes that destruction is the only way to create a better world, a vision that is in direct contrast to Batman's desire to restore order. Each of these villains has a direct connection to Batman's own psychological state. The chaos in Gotham isn't just an external force that Batman has to combat, it's a reflection of Batman's inner turmoil, his obsession with control, and his inability to accept the flaws in both Gotham and himself. His quest for justice and order creates a vacuum that these villains fill. They don't appear randomly. They are, in a way, the physical manifestations of Batman's deepest fears and desires. Each villain is a mirror of what Batman could become if he were to lose his way. And so, the theory goes, Batman, in his attempt to fight Gotham's crime, has unintentionally created the very villains he's sworn to defeat. His existence is the catalyst for the chaos that thrives in the city. Every time Batman engages in his crusade for justice, he is feeding into the cycle of chaos, allowing Gotham's villains to not only survive, but to evolve. Gotham's villains, then, are not just adversaries. They are the product of Batman's design, his need for order, his obsession with control, and his inability to understand that true justice cannot be imposed through fear or violence, but must come from within the hearts of the people. This theory challenges everything we believe about the hero-villain dynamic in Gotham. It forces us to ask the uncomfortable question: could Batman's presence in Gotham truly be the reason for the endless chaos he fights? Is Batman's quest for justice actually creating the conditions for the darkness he's been trying to eliminate? And in the end, does the very existence of Batman rely on the villains he faces? Would Gotham be the same if Bruce Wayne had never become Batman? Would the chaos of Gotham simply fade away without him? Or is Gotham itself a city of chaos, forever intertwined with the very presence of Batman? As we continue to delve deeper into the notion that Batman might be the true mastermind behind the chaos in Gotham, it becomes even more apparent that his role in the city is far more complex than just being a vigilante hero. The central question remains: could Batman's very existence, his obsession with justice, control, and the preservation of his own identity actually be the cause of the endless parade of villains that have haunted Gotham for so long? This theory hinges on a core idea. Batman's need for control is not only the driving force behind his actions, but also the seed that births the darkness he fights against. He is a man whose trauma and loss have shaped his worldview, pushing him to take on the persona of Batman to battle the evils that plague his city. But in doing so, Batman creates his own reflection. The villains he faces are not just external threats, they are manifestations of the very darkness he tries to fight against. Gotham, it could be said, is in a perpetual cycle of chaos, because Batman is the one who constantly creates the conditions for the next villain to rise. Take the Joker as a prime example. The Joker is not just a villain, he is a force of chaos, a reflection of the madness that lies within Gotham, but also within Batman. The Joker represents everything Batman fears: the lack of control, the loss of order. He is a living contradiction, a man who thrives on chaos and randomness in a city ruled by order, structure, and the very principles Batman holds dear. But ironically, the more Batman fights the Joker, the more he reinforces the cycle of chaos. The Joker wouldn't exist in the way that he does without Batman's influence. The more Batman opposes him, the stronger the Joker becomes, thus perpetuating the cycle that keeps Gotham trapped in chaos. Batman, by fighting the Joker, gives the Joker life, creating a feedback loop where every action Batman takes in the name of justice leads to greater chaos, violence, and destruction. The Penguin, too, fits into this framework. Oswald Cobblepot, a man born into the criminal underworld, thrives as a powerful and ruthless criminal because Batman's actions against Gotham's original crime families force him to step into the void left by the city's collapsing criminal hierarchy. Before Batman's crusade, Cobblepot was a relatively small-time criminal, but Batman's intervention has forced him into a power struggle, escalating his criminal empire to dangerous new heights. Penguin's transformation from a mere thief to a mafia boss is a direct reaction to Batman's influence on Gotham's criminal landscape. Batman's obsession with ridding Gotham of crime results in a criminal vacuum that the Penguin fills. In a sense, Batman's attempts to eliminate crime by force have perpetuated the very existence of crime in new, often more extreme forms. The very criminals that Batman seeks to end rise to power precisely because of his actions. Oswald Cobblepot is just another example of how Batman creates the very problems he thinks he is solving. And then there is Two-Face, Harvey Dent, once Gotham's golden boy, a district attorney who sought justice for the city. Harvey Dent's fall into madness and the duality of his character as Two-Face are a direct reflection of Batman's psyche. In Batman's efforts to bring order to Gotham, he inadvertently creates a fractured moral landscape in which Harvey Dent succumbs to his own internal conflict between justice and revenge. Harvey's downfall isn't just a consequence of his disfigurement, but a result of Batman's war on crime. Dent, once a man of integrity, becomes a symbol of the unpredictable and random nature of Gotham's fate. Batman, in his attempt to impose justice, leaves Gotham vulnerable to men like Harvey Dent, who, unable to reconcile the extremes of his experiences, becomes a villain who embodies the very chaos Batman sought to stop. Moreover, the presence of Ra's al Ghul in Gotham offers yet another compelling argument for this theory. Ra's, the leader of the League of Assassins, seeks to destroy Gotham not because of any personal vendetta, but because he believes that Gotham's very existence represents the decay of civilization. He is a man who sees the city as a failed experiment, one that cannot be redeemed unless it is destroyed and rebuilt. Batman's own obsession with Gotham and his refusal to let go of the city provokes Ra's al Ghul's response. Gotham's continued existence in a state of perpetual struggle, a city where the elite are as corrupt as the criminals, invites men like Ra's to take extreme measures. Ra's al Ghul's mission is to cleanse the city, but his methods are a direct reaction to the existence of Batman and the system of justice that Batman upholds. Ra's belief that Gotham is beyond saving stems from the city's permanent instability, an instability that Batman's actions have directly contributed to. In attempting to impose his own vision of justice, Batman has in effect made Gotham a breeding ground for radical ideas and the destruction of the city by extremists like Ra's al Ghul. At the core of this theory is a troubling truth. Gotham's villains are reflections of Batman himself. Each villain, whether it's the Joker, Two-Face, Ra's al Ghul, or the Penguin, represents an extreme version of an aspect of Batman's own character: his fears, his desires, his compulsion to create order, and his inability to accept the chaos that exists in the world around him. Gotham's villains are not merely external threats. They are the manifestations of Batman's own trauma, his psychological fractures, and his deep-rooted fears about control, justice, and vengeance. The more Batman seeks to eradicate the darkness, the more he creates it. His own need for control, his struggles with identity, and his obsession with being Gotham's savior have, paradoxically, made him the creator of the chaos he seeks to stop. In this light, Gotham's perpetual cycle of crime becomes a symptom of Batman's existence. The more Batman tries to eradicate the darkness, the more he fuels it, creating villains who challenge his mission, force him to question his methods, and constantly test his limits. Batman has created the perfect feedback loop. Each victory against his enemies only creates new threats. The darkness grows with every attempt to contain it. Gotham's villains, then, are not external forces. They are inextricably tied to the very essence of Batman himself. The endless chaos that Gotham faces is not just the result of the city's inherent evil, but the result of a man driven by trauma, a man who has allowed his own psychological scars to manifest in the very world he seeks to protect. Thus, we return to the original question: could Batman truly be the mastermind behind Gotham's endless cycle of villains? Could it be that in Batman's pursuit of justice, he has created the very chaos he struggles to eliminate? Could Gotham's fate be tied to the presence of Batman, a city that can never truly heal because its protector has unintentionally shaped it into a battleground for his own inner demons? The answer, though uncomfortable, may very well be that Batman has indeed crafted the villains he fights, creating a city that will never be free of its darkness, as long as he continues to exist as the Batman. As we continue to explore the dark connection between Batman and Gotham's villains, it becomes increasingly clear that the symbiotic relationship between the two is more than just an accidental consequence of Batman's actions. It is a fundamental aspect of how Gotham itself functions. In fact, the more we examine this theory, the more it suggests that Batman, in his pursuit to save Gotham, has inadvertently created the very chaos that defines the city. This realization doesn't just challenge the traditional notion of heroism, it forces us to confront the disturbing possibility that Batman himself may be responsible for the endless cycle of crime in his beloved city. We must also consider the possibility that Batman's internal struggle, his need for control over Gotham, and his inability to accept the city's darkness has led him to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Gotham's need for villains isn't just a product of criminal decay, but a systemic issue tied to the very nature of Batman's existence. Gotham is a city of extremes, perpetually swinging between order and chaos, a pendulum that never seems to find balance. In his relentless pursuit to establish order, Batman has created the conditions for that chaos to thrive. Take, for example, the figure of Two-Face. Harvey Dent, was once Gotham's White Knight, a district attorney who, like Batman, believed in the power of justice. But when Batman intervenes in Gotham's criminal world, seeking to wipe out crime, he unknowingly creates a situation where men like Dent, who are already fighting internal battles, find their sense of morality fractured. Two-Face's creation isn't just about the physical scar that marks his face, but about the psychological scars that Batman's existence has placed on Gotham's psyche. Batman, in trying to create a perfect world where crime doesn't exist, has pushed men like Harvey Dent into a world of duality, a place where the lines between right and wrong are blurred, and justice becomes a matter of random chance. The Penguin, similarly, is a result of Gotham's fractured society, a society that Batman's war on crime continues to shape. Oswald Cobblepot represents the failure of Gotham's elite to fix the systemic corruption in the city. Gotham's rich and powerful class, incapable of maintaining order on their own, create a vacuum that is filled by criminals like the Penguin, who rises to power as a result of the chaos Batman has created by dismantling Gotham's criminal infrastructure. As Batman attempts to wipe out crime, figures like Cobblepot take advantage of the instability and cement their control over the criminal world, rebuilding the empire Batman tried to destroy. Even Ra's al Ghul, who comes to Gotham with the goal of destroying it to rebirth it in a more just image, is a product of Batman's influence. Ra's sees Gotham as corrupt beyond saving, a place where darkness has festered so long that it requires cleansing. His vision for Gotham is one that reflects the ultimate irony of Batman's own mission. By trying to save the city, Batman has created the very conditions that make such radical solutions seem viable. In a world where Batman's presence constantly renews the cycle of violence and corruption, men like Ra's al Ghul see destruction as a way to start anew. The endless battle between order and chaos has escalated under Batman's watch, and Ra's al Ghul's solution to Gotham's ills is seen as a necessary evil in the face of the uncontrolled chaos that Batman has allowed to flourish. One of the more disturbing realizations in this theory is that Batman's creation of Gotham's villains may be more than unintentional. It could be a subconscious design. Consider Batman's role as a symbol of justice in the city. His obsession with justice, which leads him to use fear and violence as tools, may have actually shaped Gotham in such a way that it breeds the very kinds of villains he seeks to destroy. Batman's relentless pursuit of control has created the space in which villains thrive because Gotham needs them to give Batman's mission purpose. The villains of Gotham are not just criminals, they are the necessary opposites of Batman, giving structure and meaning to his very existence. Take Scarecrow, for instance, a villain whose greatest weapon is fear. Dr. Jonathan Crane was once a psychologist who became obsessed with studying fear. In many ways, his transformation into Scarecrow mirrors Batman's own transformation into the Dark Knight. Batman's relationship with fear, how he uses it as a tool against criminals, becomes the foundation upon which Crane builds his own version of fear. One that is far more terrifying because it manipulates people's very minds. Batman's war on crime has created the space for Scarecrow to manipulate Gotham's residents into believing in their own fear, reinforcing the cycle of terror that has enveloped Gotham for so long. Fear, once a tool of Batman's justice, has been turned against him and Gotham. In this sense, the theory proposes that Gotham's villains are not merely the opposite of Batman's values. They are the products of his obsession with control and his inability to let go of the very darkness that drives him. Gotham is a city of extremes, a city where chaos and order are constantly in battle, where Batman is constantly fighting for the same system he inadvertently creates. Every villain Batman faces is in essence a reflection of what he fears: the breakdown of order, the inability to maintain control, and the reality that his mission may never truly be complete. In every villain there is a piece of Batman, his fear, his trauma, and his need to remain in control. Thus, Gotham's endless cycle of chaos continues not because of the evil that runs rampant through the city, but because Batman's obsession with justice has perpetuated it. By continually creating villains, Batman unknowingly feeds the very darkness he seeks to eliminate. Gotham needs these villains to justify Batman's war on crime, and this creates an unbreakable loop where every victory Batman achieves only fuels greater chaos, leading to new threats. So, could it be that Batman is the true mastermind behind Gotham's villains? The more we consider the intricacies of Gotham's psychological landscape and Batman's role within it, the more it becomes clear that Gotham's greatest threat isn't the criminals who fill its streets, but the man who created them. Batman's need to control Gotham, his relentless obsession with justice, and his unwillingness to accept the city's inherent chaos have all led to the creation of the very villains that plague the city. Gotham's future will not change until Batman confronts the truth that he, himself, may be the root cause of the chaos he has spent his life trying to eradicate. As we continue to peel back the layers of this dark and unsettling theory, the connection between Batman and Gotham's villains becomes clearer. The very essence of the city itself, the chaos, the violence, and the darkness that seems to permeate every corner, can be traced back to Batman's own psyche. This idea challenges the traditional view of Batman as the ultimate savior of Gotham, a hero who fights against the villains and criminal elements to restore order and justice. But what if, in his relentless crusade, Batman's obsession with control has not just failed to eliminate Gotham's problems, but has in fact created them? At the heart of this theory is a simple yet profound realization: Batman cannot exist without the chaos. The city, in all its dysfunction, requires the villains Batman fights to remain relevant. The villains are not merely the opposite of Batman, they are a reflection of him. The more Batman tries to eradicate evil, the more evil seems to grow in the form of new, more dangerous villains. Gotham's criminals do not just appear by happenstance, they are birthed by the system Batman has created. Each villain serves a dual purpose. They challenge Batman and force him to face his greatest fears. But equally, they enable his existence, giving him a purpose and defining his identity as the protector of Gotham. Let's start with the Joker. Perhaps the most obvious example of how Batman's presence creates his own nemesis. The Joker is not just another villain. He is Batman's perfect opposite, the manifestation of chaos, unpredictability, and insanity, in a world that Batman desperately tries to control. But could the Joker have emerged without Batman's influence? Is the Joker merely the response to Batman's obsession with order and justice? In the beginning, Batman sets the stage for the Joker's chaos. Every encounter Batman has with the Joker only increases the Joker's power, not in terms of physical strength, but in terms of psychological influence over Gotham. The Joker's ultimate goal is to show that all of Gotham, including Batman himself, is just one bad day away from becoming him. Batman's refusal to kill or truly destroy the Joker only reinforces the Joker's role in Gotham as a symbol of chaos, and thus, Batman's failure to eradicate him becomes a part of the Joker's power. But it's not just the Joker who benefits from Batman's existence. Every villain Batman faces can be traced back to the city's deep-rooted issues. issues that Batman's mission has failed to solve. Two-Face, for example, is a tragic reflection of Batman's own battle with duality. Harvey Dent, once Gotham's White Knight, was driven to madness by a traumatic event that left him scarred. But could it be that Batman's need for black and white justice, his refusal to accept gray areas, is what contributed to Harvey's downfall? Harvey Dent's transformation into Two-Face is not just about the disfigurement he suffered, but the psychological toll of being part of a justice system that Batman has struggled to fix. Dent's tragic descent into chaos is, in a sense, a reaction to Batman's obsession with justice and order, something that ultimately fails to account for the human side of Gotham and its people. The Penguin represents a different kind of villain, one who thrives in the underworld of Gotham, controlling crime through wealth and manipulation. Unlike the Joker, who thrives on chaos, the Penguin is a businessman, a man who controls Gotham's criminal economy. But where does the Penguin's power come from? It comes from Batman's war on crime. By dismantling the traditional criminal empires in Gotham, Batman creates a vacuum of power, one that is quickly filled by figures like Oswald Cobblepot, who rise to prominence in the void left by the collapse of the old criminal guard. Batman's attempts to control crime by attacking its structure only end up creating more criminals who take advantage of the power vacuum he's created. Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, serves as another disturbing example of how Batman's quest for order results in the creation of chaos. Ra's, who seeks to destroy Gotham to rebuild it, represents a radical answer to the problems Batman cannot solve. Ra's sees Gotham's corruption and decay as inevitable, believing that the only way to truly save the city is through its destruction and rebirth. Ra's al Ghul's mission is a response to the failure of Gotham's existing systems, a failure that Batman has been unable to fix, despite his obsession with justice. Batman's perpetual struggle to maintain order in Gotham's chaotic world has, in a sense, created the conditions for men like Ra's al Ghul to justify their radical measures. Scarecrow and Poison Ivy, though more subtle in their approach, also serve as manifestations of the fear and toxicity that Batman's presence has allowed to fester in Gotham. Dr. Jonathan Crane, who uses fear as a weapon, becomes a reflection of Batman's own inner struggles with fear. Scarecrow's obsession with fear is a twisted response to Batman's embrace of fear as a tool to control Gotham's criminal element. Scarecrow's rise to power is a direct consequence of the way Batman has used fear to impose his will on the city. Similarly, Poison Ivy represents the corruption of nature, an antagonist who uses her powers to control the very life force of Gotham's environment. Ivy's villainy is also a reaction to Gotham's systemic issues, an embodiment of how Gotham's neglect of its natural and human resources has allowed figures like Ivy to flourish in the city's decaying infrastructure. Each villain in Batman's rogues gallery serves a distinct purpose. They are manifestations of Gotham's darkness and Batman's own inner conflict. Every time Batman defeats one of these villains, Gotham doesn't simply get rid of evil, it creates more evil, a cycle that perpetuates itself. The more Batman tries to impose control, the more chaos seems to grow in response. And this cycle is not only necessary for Batman's identity, but also ensures that Gotham's fight for order is never truly won. Batman's greatest battle is not just with the criminals who seek to undermine Gotham, but with his own obsession with justice and control. Gotham's endless cycle of villains is a direct result of Batman's refusal to accept that true justice does not come from control or fear, but from the willingness of a city's people to work together to build something better. The villains Batman faces are not just the antagonists of his story, they are the reflections of his own psyche, the very darkness he has spent his life trying to defeat. In the end, the idea that Batman is the true mastermind behind Gotham's villains raises a troubling question about the very nature of Gotham itself. Is the city, in its eternal chaos, simply a reflection of Batman's psychological battle? Is Gotham destined to remain in a state of perpetual struggle because Batman has, by his very actions, created the villains he battles? The answer might be that Gotham, as long as Batman exists, will never escape its cycle of chaos. Because in Batman's need for order, he has created the chaos that will forever define Gotham. As the theory unfolds, we must examine the true nature of Gotham's ongoing chaos and how Batman continues to shape the city, even long after his initial quest for justice. The more we look into the interwoven dynamics between the villains and the hero, the clearer it becomes that Batman's mission has not been the salvation Gotham needed, but perhaps the cause of its endless cycle of conflict. The villains he faces, born from his own needs and psychological constructs, represent battlegrounds that stretch far beyond physical combat. They represent internal struggles that Batman cannot escape, no matter how much he battles the dark forces of Gotham. The Joker's existence, and indeed his necessity, is a prime example of this. In many ways, the Joker is the counterpart to Batman, the embodiment of chaos, to Batman's obsession with order. But what if the Joker's chaos is not just random or born of his own twisted desires? What if it is directly linked to Batman's obsession with defining justice and right? The Joker's desire to destroy Gotham's established systems is a reflection of Batman's own internal battle, his refusal to accept that there is no perfect solution to the problems that have plagued Gotham for decades. By trying to impose his own brand of justice, Batman inadvertently gives the Joker the tools to expose the fragility of the system he so desperately tries to defend. The Joker thrives because Gotham's people are forced to see the flaws in Batman's crusade, and by challenging the very notion of justice, the Joker forces Batman to confront his own limitations. This conflict isn't just physical, it's philosophical, deeply rooted in the very soul of Gotham. The Joker sees Batman's unwillingness to kill as a weakness, a failing of his character, one that allows the chaos to continue. The Joker's ultimate plan is to push Batman into a corner where he must choose between the rule of law and the reality that Gotham may never be saved. The Joker, in his mind, is the purest form of freedom, breaking free from the chains of moral structure that Batman imposes. Gotham's people, torn between the fear that Batman instills and the chaos Joker represents, find themselves stuck in the middle, unable to escape the opposing extremes. This tension between order and chaos is the defining characteristic of Gotham, and Batman's refusal to accept the duality of the city is precisely what allows the Joker to thrive. Then we have Two-Face, a tragic character, whose fall from grace into the depths of madness is in many ways a direct consequence of Batman's mission. Harvey Dent, once Gotham's brightest hope, becomes the very symbol of what happens when the moral structure that Batman fights for is challenged by real-world trauma. Dent's transformation into Two-Face represents the failure of Batman's idealism, a failure that becomes the basis for Harvey's destruction. Batman's refusal to accept Gotham's flaws and his insistence that justice must be absolute forces people like Harvey to reckon with their own moral failures. The city's justice system, once led by Harvey Dent, falls apart in the wake of Batman's righteous crusade, and in the darkness of this collapse, figures like Two-Face rise. Two-Face's tragic fate is a mirror to Batman's own internal conflict. His refusal to accept that justice is a complex and fluid concept, and that sometimes the gray areas must be embraced in order for a city like Gotham to heal. Ra's al Ghul offers another perspective on how Batman's need for control has led to the creation of chaos in Gotham. Ra's al Ghul's ultimate goal is the destruction of Gotham, which he views as a corrupted city that must be cleansed to allow for a new world order to emerge. Ra's, however, is not just an outsider. He is a product of Batman's obsession with Gotham's fate. Batman, by trying to defend Gotham from the forces of destruction, creates an environment where men like Ra's see destruction as the only solution. Ra's believes that Gotham can never be truly saved because it is broken beyond repair, and it is Batman's unwillingness to let go of the city that forces Ra's into this position. The radical solutions that Ra's proposes are a direct response to Batman's inability to accept that Gotham may never be healed. In trying to save Gotham, Batman becomes the reason for its continued decay. Then there's the Penguin, who represents a different kind of villainy, one rooted in wealth, power, and influence. Unlike the Joker or Rhines, the Penguin isn't interested in the destruction of Gotham but in control. He rises to power because of Batman's war on organized crime. As Gotham's criminal hierarchy is dismantled by Batman, the Penguin takes advantage of the vacuum of power left in the wake of Batman's intervention. This is a critical point in understanding how Batman's actions lead to the creation of new, more dangerous threats. Penguin's rise to power is a direct result of Batman's inability to address the root causes of crime in Gotham. By destroying the old criminal families and pushing organized crime underground, Batman inadvertently gives rise to new crime lords like the Penguin, who take advantage of the broken system that Batman has only partially reformed. The cycle of villainy that Gotham faces is not just a series of random events. Each of these villains, from Joker to Two-Face, from Ra's al Ghul to Penguin, is a reaction to the very nature of Batman's mission. Every time Batman defeats one villain, a new one rises to take their place, perpetuating the cycle of chaos that defines Gotham. This constant escalation is not an accident. It is a direct consequence of Batman's obsession with order, control, and justice. Every time Batman reinstates order, he leaves a void that is quickly filled by new threats, more extreme and more dangerous than the last. Gotham's villains are not merely external forces, but are born from the tension between Batman's ideals and the reality of the world he lives in. Batman's inability to accept the complexity of Gotham has created the very chaos he battles against, and as long as Batman remains in the city, the cycle of villains will continue indefinitely. In the end, Batman's greatest foes are not the villains he battles nightly, but the psychological forces within himself that create and sustain these villains. Gotham's chaos is not a problem that can be solved with more punches or gadgets. It is a reflection of the internal conflict that Batman faces every day, a conflict between his desire for control, his fear of failure, and his inability to accept Gotham's flaws. As long as Batman continues to fight in the shadows, Gotham will continue to create the villains that challenge him. And in doing so, Batman's role as the city's protector will always be tied to its eternal struggle, a struggle that he himself has created. As we continue to unravel the complex and chilling idea that Batman is the mastermind behind Gotham's endless cycle of crime, we begin to see how this theory extends far beyond the physical combat between Gotham's heroes and villains. The real battle isn't fought on the streets. It's fought in the psychological and philosophical spaces that define Gotham's very existence. Gotham itself is a reflection of Batman's inner struggles, a city torn between order and chaos, a battleground for Batman's own moral dilemmas, his need for control, and his inability to reconcile the world he wants to create with the one that actually exists. And in this world, Batman's war on crime may be the catalyst for the villains he faces. Consider the fact that every villain Batman confronts seems to embody an extreme version of Batman's own traits or fears. Joker, for example, is the ultimate agent of chaos, representing everything Batman fears about the fragility of order. Batman's obsession with creating order is counterbalanced by the Joker's existence, where chaos reigns supreme. What's disturbing is that every time Batman defeats the Joker only becomes more dangerous, more creative in his madness, more willing to test the boundaries of sanity. Every time Batman captures the Joker, the cycle of chaos intensifies. Batman's failure to truly destroy the Joker is more than just a tactical mistake. It is part of a larger system that feeds the Joker's madness. The Joker's purpose, it seems, is to force Batman to confront his own limitations, to prove to Batman that order cannot be imposed, that chaos will always find a way to survive. Batman's constant battle with the Joker is not just a physical conflict, but a psychological one, a battle between order and chaos that runs through Batman's very soul. It's an ironic truth. The more Batman fights against chaos, the more he creates it. He needs the Joker, and the Joker needs Batman. It is a mutual relationship, each one shaping the other. The Joker, in his madness, cannot exist without the order Batman brings to the world. In the same way, Batman defines himself through his fight against the Joker. Without the Joker, who is Batman, he would be just another man, a man without purpose, a man without the enemy he needs to justify his actions. But this connection between Batman and his villains goes deeper. Batman's failure to see the truth of Gotham's crime, that it is not just the result of individual evil, but the systemic issues that he himself has failed to address, has created a breeding ground for new criminals to emerge. Take Two-Face, for example. Once a symbol of justice and integrity, Harvey Dent's transformation into the villainous Two-Face can be traced back to Batman's failure to see the nuances of justice. Batman's black and white worldview, where criminals are either good or evil, is a key flaw that drives Harvey to madness. Dent's fall isn't just about the loss of his face. It's about Batman's inability to accept that justice is often a matter of degrees. Harvey Dent is a victim of Batman's ideals, a man who wanted to be a symbol of hope for Gotham, only to be crushed by the very system Batman champions. Two-Face is not just a villain, he is the symptom of Batman's moral absolutism. Batman's insistence that order must be maintained at any cost creates the chaos that destroys men like Harvey Dent. Similarly, the Penguin is not just another petty criminal. Oswald Cobblepot represents the corruption of Gotham's elite, but also the failure of Batman's system to address the root causes of crime. Batman fights criminals in the streets, but he ignores the corruption within Gotham's upper echelons. By focusing solely on the criminal element, Batman fails to see the structure of Gotham's power that allows men like Cobblepot to rise to power. Cobblepot's empire is the result of Batman's efforts to rid Gotham of its organized crime, a power vacuum that he unwittingly created. The more Batman attacks the old crime families, the more new leaders like Cobblepot emerge to fill the void. The Penguin's rise is a consequence of Batman's failure to understand Gotham's complex criminal ecosystem, a system that cannot be eradicated with brute force alone. Even Ra's al Ghul, with his radical vision for Gotham's destruction and reconstruction, is a direct response to Batman's approach to justice. Ra's al Ghul believes that Gotham's decay is irreversible and must be purged for a new world to emerge. His belief that Gotham is beyond redemption is not born of a desire to destroy for the sake of destruction, but from a philosophical stance that Gotham cannot be saved because its inherent corruption is too deep. In many ways, Ra's is a mirror of Batman, but one who has accepted the darkness of the world and embraced it as necessary for the creation of a new world order. Ra's sees Gotham as broken, and while Batman tries to fix it, Ra's chooses to burn it down. Batman's inability to accept Gotham's flaws and his unwillingness to let go of the city leads directly to Ra's radical actions. Gotham, in Ra's eyes, is a lost cause, a city that cannot be saved through traditional methods, methods that Batman himself has clung to for so long. Moreover, even Scarecrow and Poison Ivy, who seem to represent smaller-scale villains, are also reflections of Batman's own internal struggles. Jonathan Crane, who uses fear as a weapon, represents Batman's own battle with fear. Batman uses fear to control Gotham's criminals, but in doing so, he creates a man who weaponizes fear to control others. Poison Ivy, on the other hand, represents the natural world, the untamed force that Batman has spent his life trying to contain. Ivy's connection to nature and her ability to control plants is a symbol of the world Batman cannot control, one that exists outside of his rigid moral framework. In many ways, Ivy's villainy represents Batman's failure to accept the chaos of the world, the natural forces that cannot be contained or dominated. In essence, Gotham's villains are not just figures of evil in the traditional sense. They are the products of Batman's psyche, representations of the very fears, insecurities, and desires that drive him. Batman's obsession with control, his need for justice, and his inability to let go have created a city of chaos, a never-ending battle where the lines between order and chaos are perpetually blurred. Gotham is not just a city that needs a protector. It is a city that has been shaped and molded by the very presence of Batman. His need for control has created the chaos he now seeks to eradicate. Gotham's future will forever be linked to Batman's internal conflict, a city that can never truly heal as long as Batman remains its dark savior. As we push forward with this unsettling theory, it becomes more and more apparent that Batman's very existence is a catalyst for the ongoing cycle of violence, corruption, and chaos in Gotham. Gotham is not simply a city under siege by external forces. It is a city defined by an internal battle, one that Batman himself perpetuates by his obsession with justice and order. Every time Batman steps out of the shadows to fight crime, he may inadvertently be creating more villains. This self-perpetuating cycle suggests that Gotham's darkness is not the result of the city's inherent evil, but of Batman's refusal to accept the inherent chaos of the world. Let's look at Batman's relationship with Gotham's crime families to understand how his presence in the city has inadvertently created the power vacuum that fuels the rise of new villains. Gotham's criminal underworld, long dominated by the Falcone family and other criminal organizations, is in a constant state of flux. By attacking these traditional crime families, Batman disrupts the established order, pushing these criminals into more extreme forms of criminal activity. With the collapse of these old power structures, New players like Penguin, Black Mask, and Bane step into the void, establishing their own criminal empires in Gotham's ruins. These new villains are not only products of Batman's intervention, but also a reflection of the wider consequences of his refusal to let Gotham exist in its chaotic state. For Gotham's villains, the absence of stable power creates opportunities, chances to exploit the void Batman leaves behind. Batman, in his single-minded pursuit of justice, never truly addresses the root causes of Gotham's crime problem, the inequality, poverty, and systemic corruption that run through the very heart of the city. The more he attempts to eliminate crime, the more he forces criminals to evolve, to find new ways to survive and thrive in the changing world he's creating. Gotham's chaos is fueled by Batman's inability to accept that true justice doesn't come from controlling the city's every move, but from working with the city's people to create lasting change. Batman's quest for order has also had a profound impact on the mental health of Gotham's criminals. His consistent struggle to impose his idea of justice on a city that has been historically defined by chaos has created a psychological environment in which Gotham's villains thrive. Take the Joker, for example. Batman's obsession with controlling the chaos of the world has only fed into the Joker's madness. The Joker's entire being is a response to Batman's need for control. Every time Batman traps the Joker or stops his plans, the Joker only gets more dangerous and unpredictable. In many ways, the Joker is Batman's shadow, a reflection of the chaos that Batman has tried to eradicate. But every time Batman engages with the Joker, he gives him more power, and the cycle of chaos continues. Similarly, Ra's al Ghul, the League of Assassins, and their radical ideology represent the ultimate reaction to the failure of Batman's methods. Ra's sees Gotham as a city on the brink, one that cannot be saved through traditional means, and certainly not through Batman's moral absolutism. Ra's, in his twisted logic, believes that Gotham must be destroyed in order to be reborn. Ra's philosophy is an extreme response to Batman's imposition of order in a world that is fundamentally flawed. Ra's represents the idea that the city's decay is inevitable, and that Batman's inability to embrace the complexity of Gotham's issues has led to the rise of figures like himself, who view destruction as a means of rebuilding. Ra's al Ghul exists because Batman's mission to save Gotham has failed to address the roots of the city's corruption, its broken justice system, its poverty, and its political corruption. While Joker, Two-Face, and Ra's al Ghul all represent psychological opposites of Batman, there is another villain, Scarecrow, whose existence is also tied to Batman's need for control. Dr. Jonathan Crane, as Scarecrow, uses fear as a weapon, paralyzing his victims with their worst nightmares. Scarecrow's use of fear is in many ways a reflection of Batman's relationship with fear. Batman uses fear as a tool of intimidation, a way to strike terror into Gotham's criminals. But in doing so, he has created the perfect villain in Scarecrow, someone who manipulates the same fear Batman has weaponized. The fact that Batman cannot escape fear, even within himself, is reflected in his inability to truly rid Gotham of a figure like Scarecrow, whose power is to amplify the deep-seated fears that Batman himself struggles to confront. In Gotham's continued struggle between order and chaos, it becomes clear that Batman's greatest flaw is his refusal to accept the complexity of Gotham's reality. Batman believes that by imposing his version of justice, he can erase the darkness in the city. But the darkness he fights is not something that can be eradicated. It is woven into the very fabric of Gotham itself, a city where corruption, crime, and despair are as much a part of the landscape as its towering skyscrapers. By constantly trying to stamp out crime, Batman creates the vacuum that allows villains like the Joker, Ra's al Ghul, and Scarecrow to thrive. These villains exist because Batman created the conditions in which they could rise to power. They are not just external threats, they are manifestations of the very darkness Batman tries to destroy. Every villain Batman faces is in a way a reflection of himself, his fears, his inabilities, his obsessions, and his inner demons. Each of these villains forces Batman to confront the flaws in his own approach, showing him that no matter how many criminals he defeats, the cycle of chaos will never end, because Gotham itself is broken. And the more Batman fights, the more chaos he creates. This is the tragic irony of Batman's mission. Gotham can never be truly healed as long as Batman remains the protector. His role in the city, while noble in its intent, is ultimately one of perpetuating the very darkness he seeks to eliminate. Batman's obsession with control is the very thing that keeps Gotham in its cycle of violence. A cycle that can never be broken as long as he refuses to let go. Gotham in many ways needs its villains, just as much as it needs Batman. Without chaos, there can be no order to define itself against. Gotham is forever locked in a battle between two forces, one that seeks control and the other that thrives on unpredictability. And as long as Batman is fighting for control, Gotham will never be free from the chaos it has always known. The cycle of chaos in Gotham is something that Batman has not only failed to break, but may have actually created. The relationship between Batman and Gotham's villains is a two-way street. Each villain that emerges is a product of Batman's desperation and obsession with justice. This creates a systemic problem in which the villains thrive because of the conditions Batman has set in motion. Gotham's crime doesn't exist in isolation. It exists because of Batman's actions, his relentless pursuit of order, and his need for control. One of the most tragic aspects of this dynamic is that Batman, despite all his efforts, is locked in a never-ending battle where he can never truly win. The Joker, Two-Face, and others are not simply external threats. They are the logical consequences of Batman's attempts to impose his worldview on a city that will not conform. Batman fights criminals, but in doing so, he reinforces the chaos that makes Gotham's existence what it is. Each time Batman defeats a villain, he is, in effect, creating the conditions for the next one to emerge, further entrenching the city's perpetual cycle of crime and corruption. If we take a closer look at the psychological toll that Gotham's constant chaos has on its heroes, it becomes apparent that Batman isn't the only one trapped in this vicious cycle. Gotham's citizens and its heroes alike are forced to grapple with the reality that no matter how hard they fight, they will never truly overcome the darkness that has engulfed their city. Nightwing, Batgirl, Catwoman, and others who take up the mantle of heroism find themselves locked in a battle that never truly ends. Their mission is not to rid Gotham of evil, but to perpetuate the illusion that the city can be saved. Each new villain that arises serves as a reminder that Gotham's destiny is tied to its darkness, and no one, not even its heroes, can break free from that. The trauma that Bruce Wayne experienced as a child, the murder of his parents, has led him to the belief that in order to protect the people of Gotham, he must wage a constant war against crime. However, what Bruce doesn't fully understand is that his mission, while noble, has trapped him and the city in a never-ending cycle. Gotham is a city in flux, a city that cannot heal while Batman is in the driver's seat, trying to force it into a mold that simply doesn't fit. The need for control that defines Batman's character is exactly what prevents Gotham from moving toward any semblance of real recovery. Batman has created a world where villains are inevitable, chaos is necessary, and the cycle of violence will continue indefinitely. Rast Al Ghul, the League of Assassins, and their desire to destroy Gotham and rebuild it serves as a chilling metaphor for the failures of Batman's system. Rast's sole belief that Gotham is beyond redemption isn't just an extreme measure, it is an acknowledgement that the traditional methods of solving Gotham's problems will never work. In many ways, Rast Al Ghul's radicalism is a response to the frustration that Batman himself feels. Batman, despite his vast resources and years of training, has not made real progress in changing Gotham. He may have cleaned up its streets temporarily, but the fundamental flaws of the city, the corruption, the economic disparity, and the pervasive darkness remain. Batman's legacy in Gotham is one of perpetual struggle. His resilience, which has allowed him to endure in a city that is infamous for its darkness, has also become his greatest weakness. Batman is unable to let go of Gotham's chaos, and his need to fight has become an unbreakable cycle. He has created a situation where the people of Gotham are forced to rely on their heroes to protect them from the very darkness they have allowed to grow. But Gotham's people are more than just passive victims of Batman's war on crime. They are active participants in the cycle. Whether they are criminal or citizen, Gotham's inhabitants are all affected by Batman's actions, either directly or indirectly. Take Gotham's police force, for example. James Gordon, the city's commissioner of police, is often seen as Batman's closest ally. Yet even Gordon, despite his best efforts to clean up the city, is caught in a web of corruption and inefficiency. Gordon's alliance with Batman has put him in a position of moral compromise, where he is forced to choose between his duty to the law and his need to work with a vigilante who, while often effective, operates outside the law. Gotham's police force is complicit in the system that Batman has created, and they are often left to clean up the mess after Batman's latest escapade. The police, much like Batman, are trapped in the cycle. Their efforts are only effective for so long before the next villain emerges to disrupt the fragile peace they've established. The villains that emerge are direct reflections of the problems in Gotham, many of which Batman has failed to address. Each new villain serves as a symptom of Gotham's deeper issues: the poverty, the lack of opportunity, the corruption that infects every corner of society. These villains are not just criminals, they are representations of Gotham's failure to evolve beyond the cycle of violence and corruption that has plagued the city for decades. Gotham's cycle is not broken because of Batman's interventions, but because Batman has failed to acknowledge the complexity of the problems Gotham faces. Gotham needs more than just a vigilante hero. It needs a system of justice that can heal the wounds of the past. The fact that Gotham's heroes, Batman and his allies, continue to fight this endless battle against the villains reveals the tragic flaw in Batman's approach. By fighting in the shadows for justice, Batman perpetuates the chaos he seeks to eliminate. His refusal to confront the deeper issues of Gotham's corruption and decay ensures that Gotham will never truly heal. Gotham's cycle of crime is not the result of external forces or random happenstance. It is the product of Batman's obsession with creating a perfect city, a city that will never exist as long as he is at the helm. The most disturbing aspect of this theory is the realization that Batman may never escape this cycle. Gotham, in its current state, is destined to remain in turmoil as long as Batman continues his crusade. Gotham's resilience, which once seemed like a hopeful ideal, is now a trapped existence, defined by the constant ebb and flow between order and chaos. Batman's superhuman resilience has allowed him to endure in a city that never seems to get better, but in doing so, he may have become part of the problem, the very force that keeps Gotham in a state of perpetual darkness. Gotham may never truly escape its cycle of villains, because as long as Batman is fighting to maintain control, chaos will always have a foothold. As we continue to examine the cycle of chaos that defines Gotham, it becomes clear that the relationship between Batman and Gotham's villains is not simply one of hero versus villain. It is much deeper, rooted in a psychological warfare that keeps Gotham locked in a constant state of turmoil. Gotham's villains, rather than simply existing as antagonists, are deeply connected to Batman's psyche and his role in the city. Gotham's corruption and decay don't just happen because of external forces. They are, in fact, a direct result of the struggles Batman faces within himself. Each time Batman engages with a new villain, he is not simply defeating them in combat. He is confronting a facet of his own fears and insecurities. Gotham's villains represent everything Batman fears about himself and the world around him. The Joker, for example, symbolizes the chaos that Batman tries to control but can never truly conquer. The Penguin represents the corruption of Gotham's elite, the very class that Batman believes is responsible for Gotham's decline. Two-Face represents the duality that exists within Gotham and within Batman himself. In fighting these villains, Batman is facing his own psychological battle, one that will never truly end as long as Gotham remains in a state of imbalance. The Joker's existence, perhaps more than any other villain, forces Batman to confront the fact that chaos cannot be controlled. The Joker's presence in Gotham is not just the result of random happenstance or bad luck, it is a reflection of Batman's own battle with chaos. The Joker is a villain who not only embodies chaos, but thrives on it. He challenges Batman's need for order and control, forcing Batman to confront the reality that Gotham will never be fully controlled. By fighting the Joker, Batman is not simply defending Gotham, he is trying to control a force of nature that cannot be contained. The Joker is Batman's shadow, a constant reminder of the chaos that exists in the world, a world that Batman's need for control cannot change. But Batman's role in Gotham's endless cycle of chaos isn't just limited to the Joker. Every villain in Gotham's gallery, from Ra's al Ghul to Two-Face, Scarecrow, and Poison Ivy, is born from Batman's mission to impose order on a world that cannot be ordered. Ra's al Ghul represents the extreme response to Batman's failure to fix Gotham through traditional methods. Raz believes that destruction is necessary to rebuild Gotham into something better, a vision that contrasts sharply with Batman's belief that justice can be achieved through fear and control. In trying to save Gotham, Batman creates the conditions that lead to figures like Ra's al Ghul rising to power. Raz views Gotham's decay as irreversible, a problem that must be eradicated before it can be reborn. Batman's obsession with preserving the city only invites destruction, as Ra's al Ghul sees the city's collapse as inevitable and a necessary step for progress. Similarly, Two-Face, once the symbol of justice, is created from Batman's own moral absolutism. Harvey Dent's transformation into Two-Face is not just about his physical disfigurement, it's about the psychological toll that Batman's ideals place on Gotham. Harvey Dent was once the man Batman trusted to uphold justice in Gotham, but in Batman's world of absolutes, Dent's fall from grace is inevitable. Dent's obsession with duality, his belief that the world is divided into right and wrong, is a direct result of Batman's influence. Batman, by enforcing a system of justice that is rigid and unforgiving, forces men like Harvey Dent to confront the reality that the world is not black and white. Harvey's transformation into Two-Face is the embodiment of the fractured moral universe that Batman's ideals have created. In the case of Poison Ivy, her motives reflect a different kind of villainy, one that comes from a deep-seated need to control and manipulate Gotham's environment. Ivy, once a scientist who sought to protect the planet, becomes a criminal because of the disconnection between Gotham's elite and the natural world. Batman's failure to address the city's environmental decay and the exploitation of natural resources creates the conditions for Ivy's radical response. She becomes a figure who wants to control nature itself, using her powers to force Gotham to acknowledge the destruction it has caused to the environment. In her quest to preserve nature, Ivy becomes another reflection of Batman's failures, a reminder that while Gotham may be fighting crime, it is ignoring the deeper problems that affect its natural balance. What is most disturbing about this theory is the fact that Batman's presence in Gotham serves as both the catalyst for the villain's existence and the reason for the city's perpetual darkness. Gotham's villains, in a sense, are Batman's creations. His need to control Gotham's fate has opened the door for these villains to emerge, and every time Batman engages with them, he reinforces their existence. In trying to eradicate evil, Batman has become part of the system that sustains it. The city's suffering is not the result of the villains alone. It is the result of Batman's obsession with control, his inability to accept that chaos is a part of life, and that true justice requires more than just imposing order through fear and violence. Gotham is a city in which Batman cannot escape the consequences of his own actions. By continuously fighting against the darkness, Batman has become entangled in it, unable to break free. His desire to save Gotham from the corruption and crime that define it has only ensured that the cycle of chaos continues. Gotham's villains, rather than existing as mere obstacles for Batman to overcome, represent the fractures in his psyche, the aspects of his own nature that he cannot control or contain. The more Batman tries to define justice in absolute terms, the more chaos is born. Gotham cannot truly heal as long as Batman is fighting its battles for it. In fact, the very villains Batman battles may be the proof that Gotham cannot be saved through sheer force or personal sacrifice. Batman's obsession with creating a world of order has created a world in which chaos will always find a way to thrive. This theory does not just make Batman's relationship with Gotham seem more tragic. It makes it seem inescapable. The villains Batman fights, the chaos he combats, are the products of his own creation. Gotham's future remains tied to Batman's presence as long as he exists. Gotham will be locked in its struggle between order and chaos. In a sense, Gotham is doomed to never escape its cycle, because its protector has inadvertently created the very forces of darkness he seeks to destroy. As we delve deeper into the disturbing concept that Batman is the true mastermind behind Gotham's villains, we continue to see how the very fabric of Gotham is stitched together by Batman's own presence. Gotham's endless cycle of chaos can be interpreted as the direct result of Batman's actions, and not just as an unfortunate side effect, but as a symbiotic relationship that feeds both Batman and the villains. This theory proposes that Batman's need for control, order, and justice has created the perfect breeding ground for the very chaos he seeks to eliminate. The villains who plague Gotham are not simply evil forces that emerge out of nowhere. They are mirrors reflecting aspects of Batman's psyche and his moral struggles. The Joker, the most iconic of all of Batman's adversaries, provides the clearest example of this theory. The Joker is the embodiment of chaos, an agent of destruction whose sole purpose is to undermine Batman's desire for order. Every time Batman faces the Joker, he is confronted not just with a criminal mastermind, but with his own deepest fear, the fear that no matter how hard he fights, order will never triumph over chaos. The Joker's actions aren't just random. They are a direct response to Batman's own struggle with maintaining control over Gotham. The Joker thrives because Batman has made it so. His obsession with controlling Gotham's darkness and imposing his own sense of justice has invited the Joker's chaos into the city. The more Batman fights the Joker, the stronger the Joker becomes. The Joker isn't just a villain in the traditional sense. He is the antithesis of everything Batman represents, and his existence is a natural consequence of the very darkness Batman seeks to eliminate. This idea doesn't just extend to the Joker. Every villain Batman faces can be seen as a reflection of himself, an embodiment of the dark aspects of his personality and his trauma. Two-Face, for example, represents the duality that Batman struggles with. His desire to be a symbol of hope and justice, while simultaneously harboring the anger and despair of his childhood trauma. Harvey Dent's fall from grace is a direct result of Batman's influence, a twisted mirror of what might happen if Batman were to lose his own sense of moral certainty. Harvey Dent was once a beacon of hope for Gotham, a man who believed in the power of the law. But Batman's obsession with seeing the world in black and white terms creates the conditions that lead to Harvey's downfall. Two-Face is not just a victim of circumstance. He is a reflection of the dark side of Batman's own mission, a mission that forces individuals like Dent to make impossible choices and ultimately fractures their psyche. Likewise, the Penguin serves as a direct reaction to Batman's crusade. Oswald Cobblepot, once a small-time criminal, rises to power as one of Gotham's most notorious crime lords. The Penguin's rise is a product of Batman's war on organized crime, which creates a power vacuum that criminals like Cobblepot are all too willing to fill. By focusing solely on fighting crime on the streets, Batman inadvertently creates a scenario where new criminals rise to take the place of those he has eliminated. Penguin's empire is a direct result of the chaos Batman has unleashed. He didn't create this world of crime, but his attempts to eradicate it only fueled its growth. The Penguin is a symptom of Gotham's broken systems, a reaction to Batman's relentless attempts to impose order. Even Ra's al Ghul, a villain whose vision for Gotham is radically different from Batman's, is in a way created by Batman's actions. Ra's al Ghul believes that Gotham is a city too far gone to be saved by traditional means. His belief that destruction is necessary in order to create a better world is a response to Batman's constant fight to preserve the status quo. Ra's sees Gotham's decay as a result of the failed systems that Batman continues to fight against, and he believes the only way to save the city is to destroy it completely. Ra's sees Batman's refusal to accept that Gotham is beyond repair as a flaw, and his actions are a direct reaction to the cycle of chaos that Batman perpetuates by continuously trying to save the city. In a sense, Ra's al Ghul's radical solution to Gotham's problems is an acknowledgement that Batman's methods are inadequate in dealing with the city's deeper issues. As we move to characters like Scarecrow and Poison Ivy, we see that Batman's obsession with fear and control over nature plays a direct role in the creation of these villains. Jonathan Crane, or Scarecrow, uses fear as a weapon, but his existence is deeply tied to Batman's own use of fear as a tool in his crusade. Batman uses fear to control Gotham's criminals, to intimidate them into submission. Scarecrow, in turn, uses that very fear against the people of Gotham, weaponizing it to cause even greater chaos. Scarecrow's powers mirror Batman's own internal struggle with the role of fear in his quest for justice. By using fear as a tool of intimidation, Batman creates the very villain who will manipulate that fear for his own purposes. Similarly, Poison Ivy represents the natural world that Batman has largely ignored in his quest for justice. Ivy's transformation from a scientist into a criminal mastermind is the result of Gotham's failure to address environmental issues, an area that Batman's fight against crime largely overlooks. Poison Ivy, in many ways, is a reflection of Batman's failure to consider the larger systems at play in Gotham's decay. By ignoring the natural world, Batman inadvertently creates a villain who uses nature itself to challenge his control over Gotham. Poison Ivy's quest for ecological balance comes into direct conflict with Batman's desire to control the world around him. In creating an environment where Gotham's natural resources are neglected, Batman has created the perfect conditions for Ivy to rise to power. The key takeaway from this theory is that Gotham's villains are not merely external enemies. They are the products of Batman's psychological struggle, his internal conflict, and his refusal to accept the city as it is. Gotham's chaos is not merely the result of crime. It is a reflection of Batman's internal battle to impose order on a world that is inherently chaotic. Every time Batman faces a new villain, he is confronting a dark reflection of himself, a symbol of the forces he cannot control. The more Batman tries to enforce his version of justice, the more these villains emerge, each one more dangerous and complex than the last. In the end, Gotham's endless cycle of crime is not a force that can be defeated by Batman. It is a cycle that he has created. A cycle that will continue as long as he remains the city's protector. Gotham's future depends not on Batman's ability to fight crime, but on the city's people learning to work together to break free from the endless loop Batman has unwittingly created. Batman's resilience, while once the driving force behind his mission, has become the reason for Gotham's continued suffering. He may be the protector Gotham needs, but in his refusal to accept the chaos of the world, he has become a part of it. As we continue to explore the far-reaching implications of this theory, that Batman is the mastermind behind Gotham's villains, it becomes more evident that Batman's existence in the city is not just a battle against crime, but a psychological war he's waging within himself. Gotham's chaos has grown out of Batman's obsession with control, his refusal to accept that not everything can be contained, and his compulsion to impose his own version of justice. Each villain he faces represents a mirror image of the psychological and emotional battles that he himself struggles with. These villains are not merely external threats to Gotham. They are manifestations of the very darkness Batman himself tries to hide. Take the Joker, for instance. The Joker represents pure chaos, a force of nature that challenges Batman's worldview at every turn. Batman tries to impose order in a world that is inherently chaotic, but the Joker thrives in that chaos. Batman's refusal to accept that chaos is unavoidable, makes him vulnerable to the Joker's plans. The Joker isn't just another villain trying to destroy Gotham. He is an embodiment of everything Batman fears. He is the antithesis of everything Batman stands for: order, discipline, and control. In trying to destroy the Joker, Batman only reinforces the Joker's power. The Joker does not simply seek to destroy Gotham. He seeks to show Batman that his way of doing things is flawed. Batman's refusal to kill the Joker, his insistence that there must always be a line that cannot be crossed, gives the Joker the freedom to play the game by his own rules, pushing Batman further into a battle he can never truly win. The Joker's relationship with Batman is an essential paradox. The Joker exists because Batman fights against him. The Joker needs Batman as much as Batman needs the Joker. This twisted codependence is the key to understanding Gotham's eternal cycle of violence. Without the Joker, Batman might no longer have the defining antagonist to shape his own existence. The Joker, in his madness, is Batman's foil, the perfect counterbalance to Batman's need for control. The more Batman tries to impose justice, the more the Joker embraces chaos, and each time Batman defeats the Joker only becomes stronger, finding new ways to challenge Batman's ideals. However, the Joker's chaos is not the only force that Batman inadvertently creates. The existence of Two-Face represents the moral fractures that run through Gotham, fractures that Batman himself is partially responsible for creating. Harvey Dent, once the prosecutor of Gotham's legal system and Batman's ally, falls from grace because of the very system Batman seeks to uphold. Harvey's transformation into Two-Face is a direct reflection of Batman's inability to see the gray areas in Gotham's moral landscape. Batman's black and white worldview, in which there are only heroes and villains, leaves no room for the complexity of human nature. Harvey's tragic fall into madness isn't just a personal tragedy, it is the result of Batman's failure to acknowledge the internal struggles that men like Harvey face. Two-Face becomes the living embodiment of the psychological damage Batman's rigid moral stance inflicts on Gotham. Meanwhile, Ra's al Ghul serves as a figure who believes that destruction is the only way to save Gotham, a radical response to Batman's failure to heal the city. Ra's sees Batman's obsession with preserving Gotham as a fatal flaw. Where Batman sees a city that can be saved, Ra's al Ghul sees a city that must be destroyed to start anew. This opposing viewpoint is rooted in the belief that Gotham is beyond saving and that the only way to ensure its future is to wipe it off the map and rebuild it from scratch. Ra's represents the radical solution to the problem that Batman has been fighting against for so long. Batman's refusal to accept that Gotham may be beyond repair and his need to save it at any cost feeds into Ra's plan, creating the conditions for Gotham's destruction. Ra's, like the Joker and Two-Face, is another manifestation of Batman's inability to come to terms with the reality of Gotham's darkness. The emergence of Poison Ivy and Scarecrow further illustrates how Batman's failure to address the core issues of Gotham feeds into the creation of new villains. Ivy, once a scientist who sought to save Gotham's natural resources, becomes a villain because Gotham has ignored the environment in favor of its corrupt systems. Ivy, in her pursuit of ecological justice, becomes a radical whose methods mirror the very corruption she seeks to fight against. Her creation as a villain is a direct consequence of Batman's failure to see the bigger picture. By focusing exclusively on fighting crime, Batman has neglected the very systems that allow figures like Poison Ivy to rise to power. Similarly, Jonathan Crane, or Scarecrow, is born out of Batman's use of fear to maintain control over Gotham's criminal population. Batman's reliance on fear as a tool for justice creates the space for a villain like Scarecrow to emerge. Crane takes Batman's weaponization of fear and turns it into a psychological tool that destroys people's minds. Scarecrow's power comes from Batman's own methods, twisting Batman's tactics and using them for evil. By using fear to control Gotham's criminals, Batman has inadvertently created a villain who seeks to exploit fear to break Gotham's citizens. In looking at these villains, we begin to understand that Gotham's perpetual cycle of crime is not an accident. Gotham's problems are not just the result of external forces, They are born of Batman's own internal battle, his obsession with control, his failure to accept Gotham's flaws, and his need for justice have created a world in which villains thrive. Batman's actions, his battle to impose order, are the very conditions that allow chaos to flourish. Gotham cannot heal as long as Batman continues to define it through his own struggle with fear, control, and morality. Batman is not merely a vigilante seeking to defend Gotham. He is part of the system that keeps Gotham locked in its state of turmoil. Each villain he faces represents a part of himself, his obsessions, his fears, and his internal conflicts. Gotham's villains are not just external forces, they are products of the darkness Batman has created. Each time Batman battles a new villain, he is not just fighting crime, he is confronting the very nature of his own existence in Gotham. The more he tries to control Gotham, the more he creates villains, and the cycle continues. Gotham cannot escape its endless cycle of chaos as long as Batman is its protector, for he is both the defender and the architect of its dark fate. As we continue to examine the intertwined fate of Batman and Gotham, it's becoming increasingly clear that the city's villains are not merely accidental byproducts of Gotham's corrupt systems. Rather, they are product of Batman's war on crime, figures born from the very darkness Batman seeks to eliminate. The Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Ra's al Ghul, Poison Ivy, and all the others are not random evils that happen to inhabit Gotham. They are shadows of Batman's own psyche, reflections of his fears, his struggles, and his relentless need for control. The more Batman attempts to control Gotham's darkness, the more he feeds it, creating new threats that challenge his worldview and force him to face himself. The question that inevitably arises is, can Gotham be saved from its villains if Batman is the one who has created them? If the villains are manifestations of Batman's inner turmoil, how can he break free of the cycle he has created? The villains' persistence in Gotham, no matter how many times Batman defeats them, suggests that Gotham's true problem lies not with the criminals who terrorize its streets, but with the very nature of Batman's existence and the role he plays in the city. The more he fights the villains, the more he reinforces their presence. The villains, like the Joker, Two-Face, and Ra's al Ghul, are, in a twisted sense, the necessary counterparts to Batman's own need for justice, control, and order. Take the Joker, for example, the archetype of chaos. His entire existence revolves around destroying the order Batman represents. But the Joker's mission isn't just about creating anarchy for the sake of anarchy. He seeks to prove that Batman's obsession with control, his moral absolutism, is fundamentally flawed. The Joker challenges Batman's rigid sense of justice by showing that chaos cannot be destroyed, nor can order be imposed on a world that is inherently unpredictable. The Joker isn't just a villain. He is a reflection of Batman's own internal battle. Every time Batman defeats the Joker comes back stronger, forcing Batman to confront his failures. The more Batman fights to impose order, the more the Joker reinforces chaos. And yet, Batman cannot kill the Joker, because doing so would mean he would have to accept that Gotham's evil cannot be eliminated by force alone. This obsession with order that Batman has created keeps the Joker alive, because Gotham, as long as it is governed by Batman's moral standards, requires the existence of chaos to balance it out. In this way, the Joker serves as a mirror to Batman's psyche, a figure who tests Batman's resolve, forcing him to reconcile his moral compass with the reality of Gotham's chaotic nature. The Joker, as an agent of chaos, proves Batman's failure to control the city. By refusing to kill the Joker, Batman demonstrates his belief that justice must be absolute and that chaos should be eradicated. However, the Joker, by constantly escaping Batman's grasp, shows Batman that chaos cannot be controlled, and by fighting him, Batman only perpetuates the cycle. The Penguin, on the other hand, represents the corruption of Gotham's elite. While the Joker is a figure of chaos, the Penguin embodies the greed and corruption that Batman cannot destroy by just fighting criminals on the streets. Oswald Cobblepot's rise to power as the Penguin is a direct consequence of Batman's failure to address the corruption in Gotham's systems. By attacking the street-level criminals, Batman fails to see that the real power in Gotham lies with its wealthy elite, who perpetuate the crime Batman seeks to destroy. When the old crime families are dismantled, the Penguin steps in to fill the vacuum, showing that the problem in Gotham isn't just street crime, it's systemic corruption. By focusing on isolated problems like the Joker or Two-Face, Batman misses the larger issues, the ones that keep criminals like the Penguin in power. Ra's al Ghul offers a more radical interpretation of Gotham's problems. Ra's al Ghul believes that Gotham is beyond redemption, that the city cannot be saved by traditional methods. Ra's philosophy, though extreme, offers a critical insight into the limits of Batman's approach to Gotham. Batman seeks to fix the city, but Ra's al Ghul understands that Gotham's decay cannot be fixed by imposing control. Ra's sees Gotham's darkness as a part of the system, a system that must be purged before it can be rebuilt. But Batman's refusal to destroy Gotham for the sake of rebirth only fuels Ra's obsession with cleansing the city. Batman's war on crime has led to the rise of figures like Ra's, who believe that the only way to save Gotham is through extreme measures, destroying the city and starting anew. The cycle of crime in Gotham is so deep-rooted that even Batman's greatest ally, Harvey Dent, falls victim to it. Two-Face is a symbol of the duality that exists in Gotham, a city that is defined by its contradictions. Once Gotham's White Knight, Harvey Dent becomes a villain after his tragic disfigurement. His transformation into Two-Face reflects the moral ambiguity that Gotham's residents face daily. Batman, in his efforts to create a clear dichotomy between good and evil, pushes Dent to extremes, forcing him to create a world in which right and wrong are no longer clear. Two-Face represents the consequence of Batman's black and white worldview. Batman's moral absolutism makes men like Harvey Dent see the world as a series of choices that must be decided by fate, a mentality that leads to Harvey's fall. Batman's insistence on a perfect system of justice ignores the gray areas in Gotham, and in doing so creates villains who embody this moral duality. Each of these villains is not just a reflection of Batman's enemies, but of his failures. Failures to see the root causes of Gotham's problems, and to understand that justice cannot be imposed through force alone. The more Batman tries to impose order, the more chaos arises. Gotham's endless cycle of crime is not something that can be eradicated by simply fighting more villains. It is something that requires Batman to confront his own role in Gotham's suffering. Batman has created a world where his war on crime is the only constant, and the villains exist because Gotham needs them to maintain the balance between order and chaos. This means that as long as Batman remains in the city, Gotham will always be locked in a cycle of destruction, a cycle of creation and recreation that will never truly end. Batman's greatest battle isn't with the villains of Gotham, it's with himself and the role he plays in the perpetual chaos of the city. Gotham's darkness exists because Batman's need to control it has made it inevitable. The villains of Gotham are not the cause of its suffering. They are the result of Batman's existence, his need for order, and his inability to accept the chaos that defines the city. Gotham's future will remain in this state of perpetual conflict unless Batman can break free from his own psychological struggle and allow Gotham to evolve on its own. As we dive deeper into the intricacies of Batman's influence on Gotham, it becomes increasingly apparent that Batman's role in the city is one of self-perpetuating chaos. Gotham's cycle of crime and villainy is not simply the result of external factors, nor is it caused by a random assortment of criminal minds. Instead, Gotham's villains, each representing a facet of Batman's own psychological struggles, are created and magnified by Batman's existence. Batman's presence is a key factor in the endless conflict that defines Gotham, and the more he tries to restore order, the more he feeds into the chaos he desperately seeks to eliminate. Gotham's villains are the natural offspring of Batman's own unresolved issues, his refusal to accept the complexities of the world around him. Gotham's heroes, too, are not immune to the psychological implications of this theory. Batman's quest for justice has created an environment where heroes like Nightwing, Batgirl, and Robin are forced to operate in a cycle of violence that has no clear end. These sidekicks, like Batman, find themselves caught in the same web of chaos, constantly fighting the same villains over and over, with little progress. The cycle is endless, and each new generation of heroes and villains repeats the same battle. The fact that Batman's war on crime has failed to eliminate the root causes of Gotham's issues means that the battle itself has no resolution. Gotham is a city where every battle leads to another, where each defeat is merely the beginning of another war. Let's consider the case of Harvey Dent, or Two-Face. Harvey Dent was once Gotham's golden boy, a district attorney who fought tirelessly to bring justice to the city. But in the wake of a horrific tragedy, Harvey's transformation into Two-Face reveals how Batman's strict sense of justice and his refusal to accept the gray areas of morality contributes to Gotham's villainous emergence. Batman's rigid worldview, where the world is divided into good and evil, forces Harvey Dent to embrace an absolute sense of morality, which ultimately leads to his downfall. Harvey's tragic fate isn't just a consequence of his physical disfigurement. It's a direct result of Batman's imposition of order on a city that is anything but orderly. Two-Face exists because Batman cannot accept the idea that justice is subjective, that sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't so easily defined. Similarly, the Penguin is a figure born out of Gotham's failure to address systemic inequality. Gotham is a city divided, with a stark divide between the elite and the poor. Batman's war on crime focuses primarily on the street-level criminals, leaving the wealthy untouched. But Oswald Cobblepot, a man born into poverty, uses Batman's war on crime as an opportunity to rise in the ranks of Gotham's criminal elite. By attacking the traditional criminal empires, Batman has inadvertently created a power vacuum, one that figures like Cobblepot fill with their own version of criminal empires. The more Batman dismantles Gotham's old criminal organizations, the more he inadvertently creates new ones, which are more ruthless and dangerous than the previous generation. Penguin's rise to power is directly tied to Batman's failure to address the root causes of Gotham's criminal ecosystem. Ra's al Ghul represents another example of the consequences of Batman's actions. The League of Assassins seeks to destroy Gotham in order to rebuild it, a concept that stands in direct opposition to Batman's mission to preserve the city. Ra's al Ghul's radical ideology is a reaction to Batman's idealism, where Batman sees Gotham as a city that can be saved through force and justice, Ra's sees it as a city that must be destroyed to make room for a new world order. Ra's al Ghul's vision is the culmination of Gotham's failure, the failure to confront deep-rooted corruption and moral decay. Ra's sees Batman's attempts to reform Gotham as futile, a waste of time, and his desire to destroy the city becomes a direct reflection of Batman's inability to see that Gotham's problems run far deeper than Batman's methods can handle. Gotham, in Ra's eyes, is a lost cause, a place that can never be redeemed without total destruction. This all leads to the undeniable conclusion that Batman's presence in Gotham is the ultimate cause of the endless cycle of villainy. His need for control, his obsession with justice, and his failure to address the systemic issues of Gotham's society have made him both a hero and a villain in his own right. Gotham's villains are not simply the product of Gotham's inherent evil, they are created by Batman's very actions. Each villain that emerges is a reflection of Batman's inner turmoil, his inability to accept the world as it is, and his need to impose order in a world that is fundamentally chaotic. The more Batman tries to impose justice, the more chaos he breeds. Gotham cannot escape the cycle as long as Batman remains its protector, for in his battle against evil he has created it. This theory also raises disturbing questions about the nature of heroism itself. If Batman, in his quest for justice, has created the very villains he fights against, can we truly call him a hero? Or is Batman simply a product of Gotham's broken system, a system that perpetuates its own destruction through his actions? The more Batman tries to impose his vision of justice, the more Gotham becomes trapped in an infinite loop of violence and corruption. Gotham's villains are not just the embodiment of evil, they are a manifestation of Batman's failure to see the world as it truly is. Gotham's darkness is not caused by the villains themselves, but by the hero who created them. Moreover, Batman's refusal to accept the realities of Gotham, its inherent flaws, its chaos, its moral gray areas, keeps him locked in a battle he can never truly win. Batman's failure to evolve, his insistence on holding on to his trauma and his personal sense of justice, creates an environment in which Gotham's villains cannot be defeated. Gotham's future will continue to be shaped by Batman's unresolved conflicts, his inability to let go of the past, and his desperate need to control a city that refuses to be controlled. Batman's legacy, then, is not one of saving Gotham, but of perpetuating its struggle. His quest for justice has become a prison that holds both him and the city in a never-ending cycle of violence. Gotham will never truly heal as long as Batman remains its protector, for in his attempt to control the chaos, he has become a part of it. The villains of Gotham are not just evil forces, they are the fragments of Batman's psyche, the manifestations of his internal battle, and the natural consequences of his refusal to accept Gotham as it is. The city's endless struggle for order and chaos is a direct result of Batman's inability to reconcile his own darkness with the reality of the world around him. As we continue down the dark and twisted path of Batman's complex relationship with Gotham's villains, it becomes more and more clear that Gotham itself is a manifestation of the very struggles Batman faces. The villains that plague Gotham do not simply rise because of the city's inherent criminal nature. Instead, they are a direct result of the chaos and darkness that Batman himself has helped create through his constant efforts to impose order and justice. One of the most chilling aspects of this theory is the idea that Gotham's endless cycle of crime is not an external force, but an internal one that is tied to the very existence of Batman. His need for control and order has perpetuated the very chaos he tries to stop. The more he battles the criminals in Gotham, the more he creates them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Gotham needs its villains in order for Batman to have a purpose. Without the chaos they represent, who is Batman? This idea extends to every villain Batman faces, all of whom are tied to the psychological struggles Batman himself grapples with. The Joker, with his chaotic madness, is a direct counterbalance to Batman's need for control. The Joker thrives because Batman exists, because Gotham's chaos needs someone to fight against. But it is also important to recognize that the Joker needs Batman as much as Batman needs him. Without Batman, the Joker would have no reason to exist. He would simply be a crazy man, lost in the void. The Joker's madness is a direct result of the constant battle Batman wages, and his presence forces Batman to constantly question his own moral compass. Two-Face 2 emerges as a reflection of Batman's internal struggle. Once a beacon of hope and justice, Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, embodying the duality that exists not only in Gotham, but in Batman himself. In trying to create a just world, Batman forces individuals like Harvey to wrestle with the duality of their own nature, to decide between right and wrong, justice and revenge. Two-Face's tragic fall is a result of Batman's unwavering beliefs. His belief that Gotham can be fixed, that justice must be black and white, and that crime must be eradicated without considering the personal cost of such a mission. In that sense, Two-Face is a victim of Batman's idealism and moral absolutism. The Penguin represents another aspect of the problem Batman has created in Gotham. Batman's war on crime has disrupted the old structures of criminal power in Gotham, but it has done so without addressing the root causes of the city's decay. Figures like Oswald Cobblepot take advantage of Gotham's instability to build their own criminal empires, not out of necessity, but because Batman's intervention has left a vacuum of power. Cobblepot's rise is a direct consequence of Batman's failure to realize that by attacking the criminal structures that were already in place, he leaves behind a powerless void that new criminals can fill, each with their own agenda, often more ruthless than the last. Batman's actions have led to the creation of the very criminals he seeks to eliminate. Ra's al Ghul is perhaps one of the most radical examples of how Batman's actions have created the conditions for new villains to arise. Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, sees Gotham as a city of rot, a city that can never be saved by traditional means. Ra's believes that only through destruction can Gotham be reborn into a new, better city. In a sense, Ra's al Ghul's plan is a reaction to Batman's persistent fight against Gotham's corruption and decay. Where Batman believes in saving Gotham through justice and order, Ra's al Ghul believes that Gotham must be cleansed in order for it to start anew. His belief that the city is beyond saving speaks directly to the failure of Batman's methods. Ra's al Ghul is in many ways the answer to the problem Batman has created, the failure of Batman's idealistic vision for Gotham's future. But even the lesser-known villains, such as Scarecrow and Poison Ivy, highlight how Batman's battle for control has created an environment where these figures can thrive. Jonathan Crane uses fear as a weapon, but his weaponization of fear is a direct reflection of how Batman uses fear in his own methods. Batman uses fear to control Gotham's criminals, to strike terror into their hearts. But in doing so, he creates the perfect villain in Scarecrow, who twists Batman's own tools of justice and turns them into a psychological weapon. Batman's use of fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and Scarecrow's rise to power is a direct result of the tactics Batman uses to fight his war on crime. Similarly, Poison Ivy emerges as a villain because of Gotham's neglect of its natural world. Gotham has been corrupted by years of political and economic failure, and Ivy is a radical response to this neglect. Batman's focus on crime, his need to fight criminals in the streets, has left Gotham's environment to deteriorate. Poison Ivy becomes a villain not because of some deep-rooted evil, but because she is fighting for the survival of nature in a city that has turned its back on the natural world. Ivy's quest to control nature and take vengeance on the people of Gotham is a direct consequence of the failure of Batman's methods that fail to account for the larger systemic issues that affect the city. Batman's obsession with control has created the space for villains like Ivy to rise and challenge the status quo. Every villain Batman faces is a direct response to his inability to accept Gotham as a city of contradictions, a city that cannot be fixed with sheer willpower and violence alone. Gotham is a city that is both beautiful and broken, and Batman's obsession with justice and order has created the very darkness he fights against. Each villain, whether it's the Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, or Ra's al Ghul, represents a different aspect of Gotham's decay, a decay that Batman's presence has inadvertently helped to perpetuate. Gotham's future, if it is ever to break free of the endless cycle of crime, requires more than just Batman's war on crime. It requires a systematic effort to address the underlying causes of its corruption and decay. Batman has, in many ways, become the architect of Gotham's darkness, not because he desires to perpetuate it, but because his inability to accept the city's complexities and imperfections has allowed these villains to thrive. Gotham's villains are manifestations of Batman's flaws, and each time Batman confronts one, he is forced to confront the darkest aspects of his own psyche. These villains are not simply criminals, they are reflections of the broken systems that define Gotham. And as long as Batman continues to fight for control, Gotham will remain trapped in its cycle of chaos. As we draw to a close, it's important to reflect on the staggering complexity of Gotham's existence and how Batman's obsession with control and order has shaped the very essence of the city. Gotham's perpetual cycle of chaos and crime is not an external force that Batman is fighting against. Rather, it is a creation of his own psychological state and deep-seated fears. Every villain Batman faces, from the Joker to Ra's al Ghul, from Two-Face to Scarecrow, is a reflection of Batman's own internal struggle. Each villain is born from Batman's need for control, his unwavering mission to impose justice on a city that is inherently flawed and chaotic. Batman's relentless pursuit of order has, ironically, given rise to the very chaos he strives to eliminate. His failure to accept the darkness that exists within Gotham and within himself has created a world where villains thrive in the void he leaves behind. Gotham is not just a city that needs saving from external threats. It is a city that needs to come to terms with its own inherent flaws, its corruption, and its darkness. Batman, as its protector, has inadvertently become a part of the very system he seeks to dismantle. The villains that plague Gotham are not mere criminals. They are the byproducts of Batman's psychological conflict, his inability to accept that true justice can only be achieved when he stops trying to control the chaos, and instead embraces the complexity of the world around him. In conclusion, Batman's war on crime, while noble in intent, is ultimately a self-perpetuating cycle. Gotham cannot heal as long as Batman continues to define the city through his struggle for control. The villains of Gotham will continue to emerge, shaped by Batman's actions, and his inability to accept that order cannot be forced. As long as Batman remains the protector of Gotham, the city will remain in its state of flux, forever caught between the extremes of order and chaos, where each villain serves as a reflection of Batman's own battle with his inner demons. Thus, the true question isn't whether Gotham can ever be saved, but whether Batman himself can escape the cycle he has created. Can Batman break free from the chains of his own psychological conflict? Can Gotham ever truly heal as long as its protector continues to fight the same battles, year after year? These are the dark questions that lie at the heart of Batman's endless struggle, and they remain at the core of his legacy in Gotham, an eternal battle that may never end.